Now in that case, what is map then? It's not Google Map, huh? We say mapping. Yeah, correct? Kind of color coding, mapping. Let's say
Yes,
if
sir.
1 comes, then I'll give A. Let's say 2 comes, then I'll give B. 3 comes, then I'll give C. Isn't this a mapping? Yeah,
Yes, sir.
it is called a map. So okay, I'm trying to map each and every input into some output, like a set, correct? For this set of value, I'm doing a one-to-one mapping. We say one-to-one mapping. If you put 1, then I'm going to give A. If you put 3, then I'm going to give you C. So if you see how many ever inputs I have passed, those many inputs I'm going to get. I mean, those many outputs I'm going to get it. Exactly the same size. So array map works on, a similar logic here. So for the map, I am going to pass an array. Yeah, based on an array, I'm going to invoke this map method. It is going to again, since it's a iterator method, each element it is going to iterate. It is going to iterate. Yeah, while iterating, yes, it obviously going to call this callback function with the 3 parameters like find, filter. Yeah, similar to those function. It is going to call this callback function. Now it's up to you how you would like to map these values. But then the map is expecting you should do a return value. You should do some return value. In between what you do, that's up to your logic. Correct? In between whatever you want to do that. But then the return value will be a new array. Yeah, new array. Let's say it will be a completely new array with same size. I told you if you are mapping, each element, then you are going to get a mapped value. So it will be value 1, value 2, and value 3. Now what is v1, v2, v3? This is what you are returning at the end of each callback invocation. You will be returning, correct? This callback will return some value, correct? At the end of, yeah, at the end of every element when is processed, you have to return a value. That value will be in the output. Let's say if you don't return any value, then it is going to return an array, but then it will be undefined. You know that in JavaScript, if you don't return a value explicitly, then it is undefined only. So you will have an array for sure the same size of your input, but an undefined, comma, undefined, comma, undefined. This is what exactly map is. Okay, let's understand with the example similar to what we just saw for what? Find, filter, and for each. Okay, let's take 2, 4, 8, yeah, maybe 10. What kind of mapping you want to do? Let's see what we can do. Now, just to simplify this explanation, so let's say what if I want to return for each and every element, whatever element you are giving, I want to return 1. What I want to return? What are you getting in the output? You are getting a same sized array, okay, and totally a new array. For every element, it is just giving you 1. Why? Because you returned 1 only. Let's say the case where you forgot to return because you're writing a syntax for the very first time and you forget. Then you see what you're going to get. Undefined, undefined, undefined. No, no, this is of no use. Then there will be some mapping that I should do. Yeah, that time let's say you write a logic. I want to multiply each and every element with the 2. I want to double each of the element. Assume I have to do a double of each and every element in the array. See what I'm doing? I'm doing element star 2. I'm not writing the return because it's an arrow function. Arrow function, there is an implicit return. Yeah, arrow function, there is an implicit return. This is all equal to return only. This is equal to returning nothing. You see what it happened? Mapping happened. Now 2 became 4. 4 became 8. 8 became 16. This is called map. Now in between, it is up to you what extra logic you would like to do. Whether you just want to do multiplication, no, you want to do calculation, some XYZ calculation, you want to calculate, you know, uh, for you assume like you are getting a ID, you want to say whether the student has passed or not, and for that you have a very big logic, you want to query, yeah, so what not, yeah, you can think of anything, but at the end, this is how the map works. It's up to you how you use this method. Is it clear what I'm saying about map?
Yes.
All right. So if it is clear, then I think we have got a method called reduce. What is reduce? I told you every function name as a name to, I mean meaning. So reduce means to reduce into a single value. What is it? Reduce into a single value. Which means what? Assume I've given, an array of some, numbers or anything. Yeah, it could be any value. Then, yes, this also follows somewhat similar syntax wherein you will have a callback function and at the end at the end of every element processed, you know it is going to return one single value, return something. Callback function, yeah, is bit different in terms of signature. I'll tell you. Okay, so it is going to get what is called as a accumulator. It is also going to get what is called as an element. It's going to get index. It is also going to get the array. So you see, it is actually a callback function will be called with 4 elements. I'm saying reduce used for reducing the whole array into single value. Okay. Syntax wise, callback will get 4 parameters. First one is a different value which is called accumulator. Now the return value of this reduce is at the end of all these elements processed, whatever is there in ACC. Assume at the end ACC have put 0 or have put false. Whatever you put. So the reduce will return this value which is there in ACC as a return value. I'm not saying for each function invocation. No, not for each function invocation. At the end, when all the elements processed, finally what is there in ACC, that is what it is going to give you. I'll have to explain with an example. Yeah, this method is not that simple as what we discussed, like sum and for each and map. So let me take the same example. Instead of map, I do a case of reducing into a single value. Imagine I would like to, take a use case that I have to count each of these value. What I am to do? Count of all this value. Unlike the other functions, you see it is taking callback and also it is taking initial value. So I'll come to that initial value later. But then now what actually it is happening now? Okay. So this is not actually element. This is called accumulator. And then the element. In all the other function, there is no accumulator. And in this function, accumulator is there. That's the first argument. Okay. Now the way it works is, let's say I put accumulator is equal to accumulator plus element. You can imagine the now the return value. I also have to do a return. I have to write a return statement. Or simply I can say return accumulator plus element. See what is the sum you are getting? 2 plus 4 plus 8 plus 10. Which is sum of all the elements. A bit confusing what is there in accumulator, what is there in element. Element is clear. But let me do a console log so that it is bit clear to you. So I can write a console log by using object syntax accumulator comma element. So you know so far we used to use console log accumulator comma element, but now I am placing it in a curly bracket or an object syntax. So you see the benefit of putting like that. See what is happening? It is also printing the variable name, but that is not there. If I just print just console log accumulator comma element, it doesn't say what is it. See, it simply says 6 2 4 6 10. Is this readable more, or this one is more readable? This one is more readable. Fine. So leaving about that syntax, you see now what happens in the first iteration. Accumulator has become 2, element has become 4. Then in next iteration accumulator has become 6. How?
We adding it to accumulator and the elements.
We added it, but did we store it in the accumulator? You're right, we added 4 plus 2. But where did I write into accumulator? That is what the callback, that is what the reduce actually do. Whatever element you are returning at the end of the callback will be stored in the accumulator for the next iteration. I'll repeat. Whatever you are returning from this callback will be stored into accumulator for the next iteration. So now it is stored. Assume like, okay, 14 plus 10, 24. If no more elements to process, then reduce will return that accumulated value 24. So which means if something has to store in accumulator for the next iteration, you have to return at the end of each and every element. Let's say I do a mistake or I don't do it. Let's say in accumulator I put 0 only. For every iteration I'll put 0. Then what will be the return value of reduce? You see, first time accumulator became 2 and current element is 4. See the next iteration's accumulator 0. Next to next elements iteration, 0. And after that at the end reduce has returned 0, which is what the final value which was left out in accumulator after processing all the elements. You have to write some program, huh? You have to write some logic like this, then only you will understand. But don't worry, you just have to practice like this. Now what else? So you see accumulator, did I tell you accumulator is equal to 2? Why it became 2? This is a variant, one first variant of syntax. And also you understand, okay, so there are 4 elements, but why it has only printed 3 times? Why my callback function is only executed 3 times? Because that's how the reduce works actually. If I don't assign a default value to this accumulator, in the first iteration, first element will be treated as accumulator. Second element will be treated as the element to be processed. So it only prints 4, 8, 10. You see, 4, 8, 10. Only 3 times it is going to execute. This element, it's considered that it is already there in accumulator. Meaning, okay, it will take, by default, it will take that first element into accumulator. Let us say, in some cases where I don't want that to happen, yeah, I can initialize it with, I can initialize, let's say, I want it with 1000. I want accumulator to be 1000. See now what happens. Now accumulator gets this 1000 and element it is going to process one by one. All the 4 elements one by one. See now it is executing 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the difference in the syntax when I pass initial value or when I don't pass the initial value. I'm just telling you, if I don't pass it, then accumulator starts with that value and only iterates or only process for these 3 elements. So this is why it is bit tough to understand. Yeah. So very simple. Yeah. So your reduce, okay, your reduce method has an accumulator in the callback function. What is going to go inside the accumulator depends on whether I have an initializer value or not. If I am passing initial value, then that initial value will be there in the accumulator. If I don't pass in, initial value, tell me. If I don't pass initial value, okay, if initial value is left out, omitted, then accumulator will be first element in the array. Accumulator holds the first element in the array. Now, what is the third thing you have to remember? Okay, at the end of each and every callback, at the end of every callback, okay, whatever this callback returns, this callback is going to return something, correct? Yeah, it is going to return at the end of every callback. You will have to write a return statement. If you don't write, then it is also undefined only. Yeah, so the callback is going to return some value. Okay, the callback is going to return that value. That is what gets stored in the accumulator for the next iteration. Next iteration means when processing next element, the ACC value is going to be the previously called callback function return value. That's what we are seeing here. First time it was 2 and next iteration you returned 0. So 0 is stored in the accumulator. Again, the next iteration you have stored 0 only. So 0 is returned. Where? In the accumulator. At the end, what did reduce return? 0. Why? Because final value of accumulator is 0 only. Yeah. So when all the elements are processed, final accumulator value is returned by reduce method. Now why this method became a bit complex? Because it added an extra parameter called accumulator and it has variations. Now since you have to remember 4 point, it becomes tough. If it was straightforward map, easy. Same as other thing. Here it did not make that much complex, correct? But reduce became complex because of this extra parameter called accumulator. This is about the working of accumulator and the reduce method. But when it comes to usage, we use it, we use this heavily, this method for, you know, accumulating into one single object, accumulating into one single value, returning sum of all the elements. Yeah, accumulator plus element gave sum of all the elements. So you have to use this console log statement like this when you are practicing. Now I have told you all this. Yeah, for your practice, you should do this. Then only you will understand how all these methods works. Simply you don't get the output. I don't want any output actually. What do I do with this output? You write your console logs and whatever syntax I'm telling you now, put curly brackets. That will make your life bit easy because your readability of this code becomes improved. See, first time it is 100 0 2. Then at the end of this, I'm returning some of these two. That is what is carried to the next accumulator. Okay, so these two I'm adding and again returning at the end of that callback. And that is what goes into the next iteration's accumulator value. Are you clear what I'm saying? It's kind of a feedback loop, huh? Yeah. So whatever is read from the previous iteration, okay, whatever is read from the completed and the previous iteration, it is going to give you, in the next iteration. So I'm saying, let me just copy this for you. So this is like a feedback loop. Okay, this paste. Yeah, it pasted now. So I'm saying, so this value is actually the return value what you got from here. Oh, I think it became poor. Saying the return value from this is what is 102. Return value from this return is what is 1006. Return value from this is 1014. At the end 1014, but then return value of this is will be 1024 and that is what is returned by the reduce because there are no more elements to process. So any questions with respect to reduce?
Understood, sir.
So there are many iterator methods which exist in array. But then find, map, for each, filter. These are very commonly used. So you have to be very much practiced with this syntax and you should know what is each of this. Now you should not have a confusion. Should I use filter or should I use a map? Or should I use reduce? One thing common is all these methods are iterator methods, meaning they'll process each and every element. Another important commonality is they will not modify the original array. Original array is untouched, which is called mutation. All these methods will not mutate the original array. Okay, so this is how I understood each of this method. But the big thing where most of them will just fail to continue is understanding these methods, yeah, using array of object syntax. In practice, we heavily use on an array of object syntax. We don't use it for primitives. For that, I'll take a sample array of objects. For example, users. So I have a complete array of objects of 10 user objects which is there in an array. If at all I say I know all this method, I should be able to write the code on this array of object syntax, not by putting 0, 1, 2, 3. Since for my explanation I took this 0, 1, 2, 3 are numbers because it is easy to explain. But then now, okay, I'll have to learn all these syntaxes using array of object. This is the right input. Now I have told you I am going to get an element. Now what I can do with this? Yes, you can do anything you want. Let's say I want to print only the first name. Yeah, let's say I want only print the first name. So how do I print the first name or the username? Yes, I can print the username where if I say console.log, okay, what do I say? Username colon element dot username. I just want to print the username. That's what I am doing. I can do it. Now see how I am writing the syntax now. I just did a fancy decoration here. But in simple, if you want username, I can just put element dot username. I got all usernames. But now where are these usernames? They are part of this object. Now what is the difference? Difference is now I am using the dot notation with respect to object. So likewise I can print anything I want because that's all the for each will does, right? I want ID for each of this element along with them. You can say I element dot ID comma element dot username. You want city, zip code and all that? Yes, possible. ID is 0 element dot zip code. No address dot zip code. Now this method will not differ. Only thing is our writing logic, the condition becomes tough because I have to, or I wouldn't call it as tough. It becomes bit complex. You will get confused. Now this is simple. Let's say now I would like to filter some of these users. What I want to do? Filter. Filter what? I would like to filter all the users whose ID is odd number. How do I do? Tell me. Can one of you tell me what is the logic I have to write? I have to filter out all the users whose ID is odd number. Meaning in the return array I should get ID value 1357 and those user objects.
ID percentage 2 is not equal to 0.
But first thing is, your element is not ID. This is where you should not confusion. I won't get ID directly. I get ID by element dot ID. I mean, if you meant like this, I mean, that's fine, but I'm saying. So now ID is part of this object. Anything I have to do, I just have to make sure that I'm referring the object. Percentage 2 not equal to 0. Then what? I'm going to get output. That is again an array. In that output, I'll have all the filtered out user details. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Now let's say I will write a map method now. You know, user start map, and in the output I want all the users username. How do I get? I want all the users username. Is a map method correct, or should I use for each method? Or should I use a reduce method?
Map.
Map, because for every
Yes.
element I want one element output in the array, correct? That's why it's a map. For every user, I am sure I need their username. That's why map will work. Then how map will work? Users dot map. And then instead of calling element, since it is user, I will write it as user only. Why I should write generic element? And now what I should return? You know that map output will store whatever I am returning at the end of this callback. Now if you want username to be printed, then user dot username. This will output what? This will output each and every user's username. Meaning for every user you are passing, you are mapping into their username. No, no, you don't want username alone. You want email. That is also possible. What if I want both username and email? I'm asking what if I want both username and email? For every user, I want to print or I want to take a new array which has only username and email. Simple. Since we know the object syntax, now I should return, instead of returning a simple value like a primitive, I should return an object. That's all. Should say email, comma username, user dot username. Yeah, all I'm saying is I'm now, instead of returning a simple value, I'm returning an object. So while returning an object, in case of arrow function, so I have to write explicitly return statement. On top of that, I have to put curly bracket. Yeah, there is another syntax. When you are returning an object like this, even if you wrap it within the parenthesis, it will consider that you are returning an object. Basically, it will confuse because of this curly bracket. It will confuse whether it is an object opening or it's a function opening curly bracket. That's why we wrap it in this parenthesis, in the extra parenthesis, specifically when we are returning. Now you see, now the returned object for every user has only two things, two properties, email and username. What has happened? Here I mapped it. I mapped it to get only these two keys. And this is a syntax we should be familiar for all this. And if you just have this simple users JSON, whatever I am showing now, using this you can practice lot of problems from this JSON data actually. So in one of the interview I faced actually. So instead of asking, tell me, okay, what is map method? Tell me what is filter method? They asked me indirectly questions like this. Indirectly they asked me the question. Indirectly they were testing whether I can write which method I'll use. Because people have confusion in using which method and what to use. They were testing my basic JavaScript knowledge. They asked me, okay, fine. So I'll give you this user object. Yeah, there are 10 users. Give me all the zip codes, all the users zip code. Okay, they asked me like this. One more question was there. Okay, give me, there are cities. For each user, there is a city. Give me unique cities, not just cities for every user. Or I think zip code only they asked me. Okay, there are duplicate. I think there are some duplicates with zip code. Yeah, user belongs to same zip code. They said, give me unique zip code. Another tough question was there on the same JSON object. Okay, you see each of the users have website. Dem, Demroco or demroco.info. This is having a, what to say? Yeah, website. Yeah. Oh no, not sorry, not the website. They asked me about email. See, email we have Nathan some .net. This guy has .org. This guy has .ca. You know what he asked? Okay, write a function which will print only these domains, the email domains, not the whole email. He said, I want unique domain, email domain names to be printed. If there are duplicate, you have to eliminate. org. Yeah, again if org comes, I have to ignore it. If TV comes again, I have to add it. So like these kind of questions they asked. These are in real time we use this kind of scenarios only. For these kind of scenarios only we use these methods. So why I'm relating that one here? I'm only saying if we solve these kind of questions using these array methods, then we know that okay how to use these array methods. The usage we should get, not knowing that okay there are 10 methods in array. All right. Now before we wind it up for today, I'll take another 2-3 minutes just to explain a method chaining. What is it called? Method chaining. And this is very common in case of arrays. What is it? It is common. So I'll show you with an example. Let's say I would like to get this exactly this value itself, the domain value. Let's see how to do this. So for this, I have users object. Yeah. So what is the concept I'm telling now? It's called method chaining. So you know what is method already because we have been studying a lot of methods from last few days. So what is chaining then? Very simple. So the result of one method, okay, I think I'll write it in different. So I'm calling a method one and I'm going to get some result. This one I am passing it to another method and on this result itself directly I am invoking method 2. How that is possible? Yes, it is possible. Let's say this method works on array itself. What if this method 1 is returning an array? Then I can call array dot method 2. What if this is again returning an array or a string? Let's say if it is returning string, then I call a string method on this result. Because I know method 2 has return string, I can call index of, or I can check length. So likewise, the output of one method is being passed to the other method. That's called method chaining. Okay, for this, let's see the example. The example is, yeah, maybe say take the same email domain example. I from the users, first thing is I want to get their email. How? Each user is there. I want to take user.email. All right. I got each user's email. But what is that? What is the problem with this? First thing is, let me extract only the this domain value, not the email ID. I don't want the email ID. I want the domains, correct? So I have to change my map function a bit. So what I should do? An email, I should say dot split at where I should split. I should split exactly at the dot where the dot is there. And after that, I should return the first part of that. See, I got only what? The domain value. But I think it did not work out correctly. Is it working correct? You see some, wherever email had a dot, this logic is not working. This is how you will. So then how do you solve this? Yes, we can solve instead of returning 1. Yeah, instead of returning 1. I know that the split will give me an array. In array also we have one method called at. And I can use that at minus 1 instead of just simply hard coding it every time 1. Instead of hard coding every time 1. So basically I'll tell you what is the logic I'm doing. Yeah, if you're still not followed. So let's say if there is a string like this which is coming like an email. I'm doing what? I'm doing a split. What does split will do? Where I'm splitting? I'm splitting where the dot is there. What is the return value of that? What is the return value of this this dot split? Array, correct? Now, because it is an array, I can directly invoke an array method now. At the rate minus 1. See what is the value I got? I got this value. From where? From this string. After split, it is array. And now I'm able to directly invoke the array method. And this example itself is method chaining. See how normally you would have written, or one would write, they'll store the result of this into some variable, correct? Let's say I'll store this into some variable. And then in the next line, I'm going to call array.at minus 1. Then we'll do a console log or print that value. So instead of writing one more line, so we just join at the same line. Not this. So this will be again result. I have to put it as result, correct? And then console log. You see, you unnecessarily ended up using one or two variables, extra variables, for the same output. But here, in one line. So you avoided these extra variables, ARR, result. Yeah, at least for you avoided one variable called ARR. And this can continue like this itself. Meaning there is no limit on how many methods you can chain it actually. If the output of the split is actually a string, you would like to return first character only. So based on the use case, I can go on doing how many other chains I want. Now, coming back to the previous solve a problem what we are saying, there also we can find some method chaining. For example, now you see I've got all the domains, which is good, but then are there duplicates? Are there any duplicates? Yes, there are duplicates. Biz. Okay, there are biz duplicates. How do I eliminate these duplicates? Tell me which is the method which we can use out of this iterator method which can eliminate duplicates.
Fine.
Find will eliminate duplicates. It has to eliminate duplicates, not finding something.
Filter.
Filter. Exactly. Filter. So now, so I can apply filter directly here. But then filter, how does it work? I have to now write some logic. Write some logic such that it is only giving me unique values. Yeah. So for that, I might have to put some variable called, okay, let output or let unique. There are other methods, huh? So I have to put one unique array. And now I have to check each element which is coming. Okay, each element which is coming. You guys still hear me? The power cut at my there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now you can hear. Yeah. So now I'm getting filter. So you see there is a filter. I can even write in next line. Yeah, because there is a because it's separate, right? I can go on writing. Now this element, I can write the logic like if this element is already there in the unique, what I should do? So first thing is I have to check if this, you know, element or sorry, unique dot index of can use index of this element, correct? Now what it will return? This basically this method will check whether element exists in this unique or not. If it exists, then it is going to return a positive index. So I have to check if it is greater than -1. Why? Because -1 means element is not there. If it is there, then it will return that particular index. So now if it is greater, then I should return false. Why? Because I don't want that element because already it is there in that array. Otherwise, I should say return true. On top of that, I also should do push that element because I am finding it that element is not there in that array. All I'm doing is I'm maintaining one external array called unique. In that unique, first I'm checking if element exists. If element exists, then I'm returning false so that filter will not output that element. If element I found that because it is not exist, because this condition will fail, then sure it will come to this. So that's where I'm pushing that element so that that element should go into that unique list. Now my unique will have the output array, even the filter also will give an output array. Yeah, I think there is another simple condition. I think I wrote a a bit lengthy logic, but the thing there is another logic I remember other day Gagan wrote actually. Yeah, so all it does is it checks if this element is the index of this element. They will check if it is greater than the current index or not equal to the current index. Yeah, I remember this logic. But the point is, yes, see, we can go on chaining like this. And then finally we get the result. You see, now that this is appearing only once. This is how you got unique values. Or let's say what if they have told, give me all the domains, okay, all the domains which have only 2 characters. Let's make our problem very simple. Give me all the element, all the domains whose, length is only 2. Then I can check element dot length is equal or less than or equal to 2. Now I got some out. Now what I did basically, I did chain the methods. Okay, so any questions with respect to chaining and using methods on a real world object, something like users, array of objects. This is what the real data we work with. We don't use this, silly values like 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a very rare case. All right, any questions so far what we discussed? Now, I think I have made my effort to cover all the array methods. I have covered what are objects. I have covered what are functions. So with this, basically I've touched most of the JavaScript basic concepts. Yes, there are few more concepts which I think one needs to know before heading towards a framework like this. But I think part of the next class, I am going to talk about React. And wherever I find